Alright. Right. Alright. Before I start, I have to say why I call people that use UAPs retards or whatever. The reason is because we've always called it UFOs in the decades of my experience, which I have more experience than they do with UFOs and other stuff in the paranormal because I live it, for one. And it just pisses me off in a lot of ways that they pretty much use UAPs. I mean, the military intelligence changes the acronyms, the abbreviations, all the time. They name the stuff UAPs so people wouldn't know what they are. And I guess people are trying to act like they're professionals or whatever and say we gotta call it UAP now because it's what they're calling it. No. It pisses me off. It really does. That these idiots they're UFOs. Okay? They're not UAPs and stuff. So, I mean, hold on a second. I don't need that. No. Yeah, I mean, people are just saying that's a big stream and stuff, and it's stupid to call it that they're not retards and stuff. But the thing is that, well, that's what they really are. Unknown aerial phenomenon is something else from UFOs, unidentified flight objects and stuff. And it's like, it just proves that they're just stupid when they do that. Anyways, UAP witnesses are being gaslit by U.S. government. Yep. Facts. This from News Nation. I just had to rant and put that out there. This stuff, it does piss me off. It should, but it does because for people like me, it's like, you know, there are all these people that think they know stuff, and you know, think, well, if we're professionals, we gotta use UAP, not UFOs, because that bullshit. Anyways, this from News Nation. Shout out to them. Legal persons using this fair use, and also transformative. I put my own experiences, stuff like that, with UFOs and paranormal with this stuff. So let's get going.
You know, this was tracked on camera for 40 minutes, and you were finding it was going in.
Wait a minute. UAPs be gaslit. Check them out.
During your investigation on the ground, this was tracked on camera for 40
Why the
minutes,
hell?
and you were finding it was going in circles.
This is
How
the picture.
significant is that detail, and what are you taking away from this rubber duck incident?
Well, the fact that it was going in circles is disproving any suggestion that it was just
Sure.
a balloon floating randomly with the prevailing winds. It was intelligently
That's not a
controlling
balloon.
itself and circling a specific area, which we actually searched with ground-penetrating radar just to see if there was anything there. What fascinates me is you have a situation now where...
Look at that. It's definitely metallic. There's different points. There's like a thin area here. It's like an antenna right here. It's like there's a camera right here. Looks like there's something out of Star Wars, actually.
Military pilots, civilian pilots, Customs Border Protection, local civilian witnesses are reporting with frequency anomalous objects doing what apparently seem to be intelligently controlled
UFO
maneuvers
videos,
over
dummy.
remote parts of the Arizona desert. And the question we asked was, could there be something happening in Arizona that's not being publicly disclosed by the
Yes.
US government? And that's actually what led us in the latter part of the program to head up towards Sedona. I do think that what is possibly happening, we know from the stories that I've done previously with people like Jake Barber and David Grush, we know that there are allegations of a legacy UAP retrieval program that is retrieved, unbelievable as this may sound, unbelievable but true, non-human intelligence technology. And we know that there are locations, hidden locations, where this technology is being experimented with and worked with. And I think there's a body of evidence to suggest that there are perhaps...
Yeah, so let's see. One looked like a duck. One looked like a cigar. Let's go back here. This is from the border. Or duck. La Bruja, cigar, and stuff.
The body of evidence to suggest that there are perhaps non-human and perhaps some human technologies operating in this airspace. That's what my takeaway is. I don't think that this is an incursion by organised crime cartels from Mexico. I do think that what we need to look at here is the very real possibility that the Customs and Border Protection stumbled across some kind of craft that are, in some cases, emanating from covert US government facilities that the US is trying to keep quiet. And I do worry about the fact that the US is...
These have to be government drones. Secret ones, too. Definitely secret ones. Now, could they be NHI? Yeah, they could. They could easily. We have secret stuff, they got stuff, so...
Still maintaining the pretense that it has no knowledge of the existence of any kind of non-human technology, because it's becoming very, very clear good people in different agencies, notably in this case Bob Thompson from CBP, they're seeing these things. Military pilots are seeing these things. And what do we do to these people? We gaslight them. And the government tells them they're not seeing what they're seeing. And I can tell you, Natasha, there are a lot of witnesses who, frankly, are sick to death of being gaslit. They're coming forward and they're determined to get this story told. And I think there's pressure now on the government to be more transparent about what it knows.
And Ross, tell me a little bit more about whistleblower and former Border Patrol agent Bob Thompson. What was his journey to bring these videos to light? And what has this reporting process been like for you? I know it's a rigorous one.
So Bob's somebody who has been working in national security. He's been keeping our borders secure, and he ended up in essentially the aviation wing of Customs and Border Protection, making sure that there was adequate monitoring over our borders. And as we know, this has been a controversial issue. It was a major election issue for the incoming administration. There's been a lot of political capital made out of pointing out the fact that our borders were, frankly, wide open. And I got to see that myself with our correspondent Ali Bradley on the border. So Bob was concerned that inside CBP, when he was raising his concerns about these anomalous objects being seen by CBP aircraft and by military witnesses that he'd spoken to, there just seemed to be an inertia. Nothing was happening. And, you know, I don't think it's a conspiracy, Natasha. I don't think there are people inside Customs and Border Protection who are basically saying, we've got to cover this up. More often than not, the explanation is a simple screw-up. Nobody wants to admit that they have no explanation. And so, whilst these objects are breaching airspace and coming into areas that are sensitive and getting in the way of military aircraft, and in one case we know about even colliding with them, I think the problem for Bob's bosses was they determined to put their heads in the sand because it's just too hard. How do you explain something?
Yeah, and here it is here.
Mountain teams, border awareness and intelligence teams.
So, here it is right here, UFOs at the border. Again, going over sort of fair use, transformative, going this over previous these reasons, putting this legal out there, give credit to News Nation, leave a comment, leave a like, both sites. Tell me what you think out there, everybody. Sorry it's late, but with the shitty internet out here, it can be hard sometimes to be able to broadcast. But not enough people watch on here, so I'm not going to put time doing it. There's not enough people do that. It's just a waste of my time, and I'll do other stuff. But anyways, put that out there, my own UFO experiences and what I know, what I think, stuff like that. Hold on. Sidetracked, but anyways, alright. So this is, you know, shout out News Nation, everything, Ross Coulthart and everything. Finally has UFOs. See? Can we smarten up, people? I shouldn't be like this, but all my life I've been attacked and stuff like that, and talk about UFOs or whatever, told to shut up about UFOs. I could have had millions of people if I would have talked about it and stuff like that. I should have done that, but stupid family and people told me to keep it silent. New people worked around this stuff. Anyways,
let's establish your credentials. Who are you? What was your role in Border Protection?
So I am a retired Border Patrol agent. I worked for the United States Border Patrol for 14 years, and I worked on, my last assignment was with the Special Operations Detachment in the Tucson Sector Border Patrol. I started in January of 2008 and retired in January of 2022. During that time, I served on different special operations teams at the station level, including ATVs, mountain teams, border awareness and intelligence teams. And like I said, the last part of it, I was flying for the Border Patrol, and also had the ability to help out and start out a system that they called the Air Coordination Center. So that was something that was going to involve all the flight stuff that was in the Tucson Sector Border Patrol.
Your job required you to have a security clearance?
Absolutely.
You had a top secret SCI clearance?
Nope, just a regular classified top secret.
You were a respected Border Patrol official?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I worked as a paramedic on a special operations detachment for a group called the Mobile Response Team, which is one of the 3 tiers of the special operations for Border Patrol. So I was kind of our team medic, the only paramedic that we had on that team. So I had the ability to take care of both the bad guys and the good guys.
Before you got into this topic, what was the attitude inside the Border Patrol organisation to the subject of unidentified anomalous phenomena?
I would say non-existent. Non-existent. There wasn't any attitude because no one really discussed it openly.
Right.
So what got you into it?
Me personally, I was always interested in the topic and had.
I mean, if you wanted to get fired, if you want to lose your top secret clearance, you never talked about that. You never, if you saw anything, shut up. You don't say anything. That's when you lose your job, your clearance, and everything else, unless you have some higher command or special investigations people come to ask you questions about that, and then they tell you to be quiet about it and never talk about it or whatever. So it's just these past few years where people have been able to come out and talk about it more. To this day, though, they still will fire you. You have to do a whistleblower thing as well, because you can face hard time. You can face prison time, 25 to life for talking about. So that's top secret. There are papers that you sign, etc.
I've had sightings of anomalous objects myself all throughout my life.
On the job as well?
On the job as well, yes.
What did you see?
I've seen orbs. I've seen strange lights that were, just bright and hovering, take off, stuff that maybe could have been satellites that moved in ways that weren't like satellites, a lot of stuff at night. And we also had the ability to use some of the technology to see some of these things as well.
So where you were operating is quite an interesting and unusual area. You were operating along the border with Mexico, ensuring the border was secure, but you were also adjacent to some key military air training ranges, weren't you?
That's correct. We were responsible for areas that included the Barry Goldwater Range, and a lot of the military areas of operation along the border are air corridors, flight path for jets that come down from Luke Air Force Base, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and the Yuma activities as well out with the Marines.
So there's vast areas, remote
parts
parts of Arizona, which are being used by the Air Force and other military agencies to train military pilots.
That's correct, using all kinds of different platforms that we would see while we flew out there.
And in the middle of all of this, you're flying there with what kind of aircraft and what kind of capabilities?
Well, the ones that I mainly flew on were helicopters. So when I was flying with the National Guard, we flew on the UH-72 Lakota, which is kind of a standard utility helicopter for the the Army National Guard. We also flew on the UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters doing apprehension stuff, as well as fixed wings that involved the RC-26 Metroliner, and Hueys as well, UH-1 Hueys.
And what kind of kit do you have on those helicopters so that our audience can understand the capabilities, without giving away any national security issues? What kind of things can these equipment do?
Well, they have the ability of seeing in the dark and seeing different thermal spectrums with things. So the common terminology that a lot of people hear is the FLIR, the forward-looking infrared. So some of those platforms had cameras on board that utilized a sensor operator to look for targets that were on the ground, or in the air.
So you've got sophisticated surveillance gear.
Absolutely.
It allows you to look on the ground and in the air.
And in addition, you had the pilots wear NVGs as well as the crew members as well. So they're scanning.
Just explain what NVGs are.
Night vision goggles.
And what are they?
They give you the ability to see in the dark.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got a pretty formidable amount of equipment there that allows you to see what's out there.
That's correct.
What is out there?
Well, me personally, I've seen, like I said, orbs that were off in the distance. I've seen craft that were cigar-shaped. I've seen triangles myself. I've never been able to record them.
There is some remote viewing that I can see out there sometimes. I can see craft going in and out there quite a lot. Or they'll just show up and stuff and disappear, and they'll just go back and forth. And everything. I just see these things in my mind and stuff like that happening a lot. Whether it's daytime or nighttime, it doesn't matter. It's happening a lot over there by the border and around these bases. more and everything. So, I mean, I think that they're having this technology more out there now. I mean, we've had it there before, this stuff. Not as much, but we did. It's just that it's happening more often, so we're seeing more of this, because before, you wouldn't hear anything about this. I mean, this guy could be imprisoned for talking about this. We did do a whistleblower. I guess, is he a whistleblower? Yeah, so, yeah, he'd be in prison for 25 to life. So that's a reason not to talk about this and everything. Lose your job, career, you know, having federal offense attached to that and everything else on a, you know.
Personally, but,
criminal
you know, with
charges.
videos that I have seen from other agents show some of that stuff.
Now, during your role in border protection, there came a time when you suggested to your superiors that you start preparing some kind of research report into what was being seen.
I did. When I was working for what they call the Arizona Air Coordination Center, I was kind of solicited for the ability to put together a report, what they call an issue paper, and get that subject kind of on the record. And we were having incidences where the potential could be there for a strike from, say, a small UAS, and it kind of fit into that program. So
there was a concern among pilots,
safety concerns,
that there might be a collision with these objects they were seeing.
there could be, but we were.
But along the border with Mexico, there's also a flight safety issue.
Well, and like I said, there's so many platforms that are down and around out there, but the aircraft have their safety systems that they worry about. But you also have, like I said, you have guys on the ground, Border Patrol agents that are operating, you know, their drone surveillance as well in the apprehension of.
How many agents did you end up speaking to in border protection who had seen anomalous objects?
At least 100. At least 100.
Wow.
And a lot of those
100?
are, you know, personal friends and stuff as well. So.
And what sort of things were they telling you?
Well, for example, small triangles is, you know, something that we haven't really heard a lot about. Maybe Jeremy Corbell reported some of those small triangles that were hovering above the ships. These were small triangles that were flying over agents. In addition to that, they had
And just so I'm clear,
large triangles.
were those small triangles, whatever size they were they showing any visible means of propulsion?
Nope.
When they were showing on FLIR, forward-looking infrared, was there any visible heat source?
I'm not aware of anyone tracking any of the small triangles on FLIR, but that they may have seen them with the night vision goggles. I know for
The thing is, I do know that we do have intelligence, spy agencies, stuff like that, where we can look from satellites, we can record this stuff happening live, we can see these objects in real time appear and move around and stuff like that. We have this going on all the time. We got stuff in space. We got thousands of satellites out there. Okay, how many? I mean, you're not going to know, because different governments don't want you to know how much is out there. That we can see this stuff, night, day, or whatever. So I mean, they can know what he and his agency or department can see. It's only a small part versus other intelligence departments, and I should say. Say this. I should say contractors, defense contractors, stuff like that. Other intelligence groups, they can see things others can and can't. So
The fact that one of the guys looked at these things with night vision goggles and he didn't see any type of propulsion or anything on them. They were just kind of silently moving around the desert.
So this is being discussed inside border protection
Amongst the guys, yes.
as an issue of concern?
Well, and speculation as to what they could be as well. I don't think anyone that I came across from a ground agent standpoint thought they were a safety concern. You know, for them, it became more of a concern for the stuff that was flying around in the air. The pilots had more of a concern for more about than anything.
You mentioned some of these agents were also seeing larger black triangles.
Large
You
black
didn't say
triangles.
You mentioned some of these agents were also seeing larger triangles.
That's correct. I have a personal friend that was out west of, or east of Yuma, Arizona, out on patrol out there, and had a very large triangle fly over him.
How
that
large?
was silent. The way he described it was at least 100 feet, maybe 50 to 100 feet wide. Silent, flying right over him. No lights on.
Nighttime?
Nighttime.
Using night vision goggles?
No, they saw it personally without anything right over the top of them.
I mean, that by definition is extraordinary. I mean, it's unusual. It's a craft of some kind.
It's a craft, but like we've talked about already, there is a large military training area.
I don't know, for some people it's still extraordinary. For me, I see these things, different UFOs, quite a bit. I don't know. The paranormal is just the usual for me. I don't know, it just is. I don't know. I mean, you get excited and stuff like that, but it's just expect the unexpected. And stuff. So
Yeah, out there. So could it be something that the military was testing? It's a distinct possibility.
But when he saw that large black triangle, did he hear any noise?
No noise at all.
Did
Silent.
he see a propulsion system?
No propulsion system. And it wasn't just him. There was two people out there that saw it at the same time.
And you spoke to both of them?
I didn't get to speak to the other one. The other one was his friend.
But how often were the witnesses that you spoke to corroborated by other agents?
A lot of times there were multiple agents that saw stuff at the same time. I have a story about a supervisor that I was with that we saw stuff come out of the sky down in Sedona. Two objects came down. They were just lights, came straight down out of the sky and then moved horizontally and disappeared behind some mountains. Both of us were sitting there in a truck and neither of us could come to an explanation of what that was. So
there is secret bases. There's underground places that we got inside and just by mountains and stuff like that. They'll disappear to the earth and stuff like that. Yeah, I would be. He's buying a lot of these bases and installations. That is fucking awesome. That is fucking awesome.
So-
God.
I'm not making any criticism of you here, but you're part of Homeland Security when you're working for Border Protection, aren't you?
You are. I'm retired now. I just want to make that.
No.
Yes.
So
Right.
this is after 9/11.
Be very
Protecting our
disclaimer.
borders is sacrosanct.
Absolutely.
An unknown, by definition, is a threat.
Absolutely.
So what was going on inside the organisation when agents were reporting this to you as part of your research?
Well, I explained that I was gathering information in a certain sense, but I also made it very personal because it was, it was something that the agents didn't freely talk about. So if I shared experiences that I had, it seemed you could open up agents to have them kind of share their experiences. I knew I wasn't the only one that saw things out.
I just want to explore that with you. So they didn't want to talk about it.
No one likes to talk about it freely.
Why?
I think it's just still a
Just
taboo
don't.
subject because
I'm
it,
sorry, by definition, though, if you see a gigantic 100-foot craft, black triangle of some kind hovering over you
That's
in
a
the desert in
taboo.
the middle of
You
Arizona,
don't talk about
that's a
those
national
things,
security
probably.
issue, isn't it?
consensus being, that being a training range, I think there's a lot of agents that think that may be just, stuff that we're flying ourselves. So
But you can't make that assumption.
you can't make that assumption. It wasn't hostile, put it that way. If these guys were describing hostile events to them, I think we would be having a different conversation.
Yeah,
But they're not. Most of them are just sightings that occur, you know, and they're kind of non-events. They'll see something that flies over. Sure, it's a safety concern, but you know, it's not a concern for the agents at the time.
But I mean, if a plane load of Al Qaeda terrorists was coming over the border,
you
you guys
would
would be
That would be-
hot to trot.
that
You'd
would
be
be a
pulling all
concern.
the alarms. You'd be making sure that whatever the hell it is, it stopped.
We'd certainly be making the notifications to the right people. I don't think the Border Patrol is capable of combating, you know, Taliban, but that we would make the
Airplanes,
appropriate notifications. To
But
the
you
right-
understand what I'm saying here? I mean,
Absolutely.
there's this huge issue, hundreds of
Absolutely.
reports. Agents are seeing these things, and I would have thought there was an obligation to report them.
The problem was we didn't have any reporting requirements for that. If it didn't have a nexus to smuggling routes, I don't think anyone wanted to say on the record that they'd seen a large triangle flying over them. And who would you report that to? What is the? There wasn't a
chain
means.
of command, yeah.
There wasn't a means to report it.
Or CIC.
Now, the thing that really struck me, and forgive me, Miguel, if I go on this diversion, but it's important.
Go right ahead, please.
Are you aware that the US Air Force was also seeing strange objects on these ranges?
Only through open source media. I was aware of the Drive publishing an article about stuff that they saw out in the West Desert training area, which really corresponded to what our pilots were seeing as well. So I am aware of that.
I mean, what's interesting is the War Zone, which is an excellent online periodical, it reported on what it described as drone swarms over not just training areas, but the Palo Verde nuclear plant in Arizona.
That's correct.
Multiple times
That's
in
correct.
September 2019. So something, whatever it is hovering.
I gotta say, I do. He's not retarded. They're not retarded. It's just I hate when people call UAP. I think it's retarded that they do that. I do need to apologize. It's just for people like me, all for decades that have had UFO paranormal experiences. It's just it irks a lot of us. It triggers us, I guess. And he's not retarded. He's not. I should say the UAP thing is stuff is like I don't like it when people do that, and I need to say that. He isn't. And it's not. I just say what they say UAPs instead of UFOs because they're not retarded. They aren't. And that's really shitty of me to ever insinuate that and to get too egotistical. That's bad of me and really shitty of me. It's not right. And it'd be wrong. It's totally wrong. It's just I don't like the UAP part. Right here it tries UFOs. And I do need to apologize about that. I do.
Over an extremely sensitive nuclear facility. Was that an issue in Homeland Security to border protection?
Well, nuclear power plants are a little outside our purview, but stuff along the border certainly was. I never had anyone say that they reported drone swarms. Most of the reports that I saw were singular lone items or lone objects.
There was also commercial reports coming in. There was the crew of an American Airlines flight in a Phoenix Air Charter business jet. They reported an encounter with a UAP in the southern part of the state on the border with New Mexico the year before. I mean, this is amazing. There's stuff all the time in the skies over Arizona.
There's obviously something going on in Arizona along the border areas, more than just illegal immigration.
One of the things I was really impressed with.
I gotta say from experience and Native American, not Native tribal. Native Americans, what they use, they're not Native Americans, and so my blood in that, we're tribal nations, right? Word to use tribal nations there. Is that there have been ETs, alien, NHI around there for thousands of years forever. They've been there as long as we have. And you have stories of the Hopi and other tribes where whole tribes have just left, gone off world. And your ETs have been around there all the time. They're also attractive to the tribal areas and these installations. They want to see what we're doing. We work with ETs. We work with them. We work together on some projects. This is, this makes total sense. And in my mind's eye, I can see these things going to Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. I can just see them going back, just flying real fast. I can see these things. And it's not surprising with tribal Indian nations and the secret bases that we have, whether it's above ground or underground, and working together. All the re-engineered technologies that we have and everything. This should not be surprising.
Was the fact that the war zone obtained on FOI safety reports from the US Air Force, which showed that on one occasion, one of these objects hit the cockpit window of an F-16 fighter jet. Have you ever heard of those kind of incidents?
I have not heard of that personally. I don't know if I'd be purview to the Air Force's safety reports, and I don't remember any open source information about that specific event you were talking about. But
Did you approach the Air Force at all?
no, we did not have a relationship per se with the Air Force. At least I didn't. I know we were lone objects.
There was also commercial reports coming in. There was the crew of an American Airlines flight on a Phoenix Air Charter business jet. They reported an encounter with a UAP in the southern part of the state on the border with New Mexico the year before. I mean, this is amazing. There's stuff all the time in the skies over Arizona.
There's obviously something going on in Arizona along the border areas, more than just illegal immigration.
One of the things I was really impressed with was the fact that the war zone obtained on FOI safety reports from the US Air Force, which showed that on one occasion, one of these objects hit the cockpit window of an F-16 fighter jet.
Yeah, I've heard.
Have you ever heard of those kind of incidents?
I have not heard of that personally. I don't know if I'd be purview to the Air Force's
I've heard of,
safety reports. And
of hitting, planes, airlines. I've seen pictures of what may have been a collision with a UFO with these airlines. People can look this up on the internet, different places, even Twitter. Collision with a train. I've heard of collisions with UFOs with the train, with a truck. I've had reports of a trucker where the UFO was trying to stop a guy in his rig and is using like a tractor beam, gravity beam, to stop this guy in the truck, like trying to abduct him and just terrorizing the guy and stuff. And how this is one of the things with what's his name, that he's always saying that all ETs are good, and that's complete BS. They're not. There are good and bad ones out there, and stuff like that. So, and some don't know how to drive that well either. I comedically call them juvenile delinquents. So these ETs, juvenile delinquents, they're like only 16 years old. They just got their license to drive, and they're causing a mess out in South Central or whatever. Don't be a menace, South Central or whatever. Instead, they're being a menace to humans or whatever, right? So,
And I don't remember any open source information about that specific event you were talking about. But
Did you approach the Air Force at all?
no, we did not have a relationship per se with the Air Force. At least I didn't. I know we had military liaisons that worked for the Tucson sector. That might have been in their wheelhouse, but it wasn't in mine.
But this is what worries me, is the whole lesson from 9/11 was that you had individual agencies finding out things about the Al-Qaeda terrorists and not sharing it with other agencies. And I'm not saying this is a terrorist incident, what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But you...
the thing is, we have way too many. We have corruption in all these agencies. We need to get rid of most of them, just have a few of them. That's a huge problem. We have over 21. Probably, we have a lot more than that. So we have like 24 intelligence and advanced projects agencies like DARPA and other stuff, and we need to get rid of a lot of that, get rid of a lot of the corruptive industrial complex of all
You've got
this.
Homeland Security becoming aware of strange anomalous objects in the skies. You've got the Air Force FOI'd safety reports talking about anomalous objects in the skies. They call them UASs or drones. But there doesn't appear to be any evidence that they are identified as drones. And some of these objects are operating at 17,000, 20,000, 33,000, 36,000 feet. Does any known drone operate at that feet?
None that I know of. At least when I was working for the Border Patrol, we did not have any drones that went that high, that were commercial, small, or otherwise for the most part. We did have other surveillance platforms that flew for Department of Homeland Security, but they weren't tied to any type of...
The thing is, we actually do. The Navy, we have... but they're UAVs, not drones, so I mean that's a technical difference between drones and UAVs and stuff. So, which is tens of thousands of feet, 56,000, 60, 75,000, or whatever. But drones and UAVs, I guess, different categories.
Drone that moved in a quadcopter type fashion or otherwise.
And here's another US Air Force report, which was obtained on FOI. March 2021, 2 pilots in F-35s are flying near Casa Grande in Arizona between Phoenix and Tucson. They report seeing a large white UAS stationary at 24,000 feet.
It's pretty interesting. That was probably on their route down to the Barry Goldwater Range or heading south. That would be my guess. That's a little far north of the border. Casa Grande's a little bit further north from where we were at, but
right.
It's still in the general area. They were probably en route down to the training zone.
But what's interesting is there are things called HATERs, hazardous air traffic reports, which have been obtained by journalists from the US Air Force. And there's a succession, in fact, there's a blizzard of reports from the US Air Force talking about how F-35 jets have had to evasively maneuver to avoid clusters of small UAP objects or UAS objects at ridiculous altitudes, 20,000, 30,000 feet. These don't sound like commercial or even known military drones, do they?
No, they're not.
No, they don't.
No, because they have to move out of the way, and you have FAA, air traffic control, coordinating. You have military as well, coordinating all of air traffic. So you'd have state, local, military, and places where only military and special aircraft could be, and they'd be telling these objects where they could go, and etc. So there's a lot of stuff that's not being controlled, and this sounds more like non-human intelligence, not government stuff, because if it's government control, we don't like to get in the way of other fighter aircraft, but non-human intelligence doesn't really care that much. They do whatever the hell they want, whether we like it or not.
And typically, the Border Patrol agents aren't looking up at, they're not looking straight up at 30,000 feet or 25,000 feet either. So that would be definitely out of their kind of line of sight for the most part.
What I find fascinating is the Air Force, the US Air Force, is clearly seeing the same things as your colleagues were, your agents in the Border Protection Force with Homeland Security. And nobody's talking to each other.
It's a mystery.
There's a fighter pilot from the
This is another thing. Everything is very compartmentalized with these intelligence, compartmentalized, which means there is a lot of things that they're not going to share, things that a higher organizations will share. It's a case-by-case basis and stuff like that, and how they want to control classified intelligence, because everybody is jockeying for highest position and who knows what on intelligence, on stuff that is top secret and stuff like that. Want to have that edge and stuff like that. So I mean,
US Air Force, who puts in a hazardous air traffic report at 21,000 feet, he sees a small black metallic object. That's all it says. It's never explained. And yet we know these things are operating in secure air training areas adjacent to the border with Mexico. By definition, that's a national security flight safety concern, isn't it?
I would think so.
So I think I've made the point that I wanted to make with the Air Force reports. Basically, there's an independent series of corroborative reports which prove that what your Border Patrol officers were seeing was being corroborated at the same time by the US Air Force. Now, in my book, that's what we call data, evidence. True?
I would say so.
So what happens? You write your report.
I didn't get a chance to finish my report, Ross, because I had to medically retire from the Border Patrol. So I'm hoping that got carried on and someone was able to help get reporting requirements into operation within the Tucson sector.
We do know that the Department of Homeland Security, at a very, very high level, was considering beginning its own investigations into UAPs, because we know it's now official that there were approaches by people who were concerned about this issue from Defence that this should be investigated. There was a push inside DHS to begin an investigation, and it was allegedly shut down. Does it concern you that this was shut down?
I think yes, because
It's
I
never
think the
shut
Department
down.
of Homeland Security.
The thing is, this stuff is never shut down. They just do that to keep things secret from civilians. It's all a bullshit game, and there's no truth to it. They are investigating this still. It's ongoing. Any agency that tells you, that has top secret stuff, intelligence stuff like that, classified stuff, is lying. If they say they're not investigating UFOs, UAPs, stuff like that, they're lying out their arses. Don't ever believe it, because what they're trying to do is keep knowledge away from the people, the civilians, and the truth away from civilians and the people.
Could have a pivotal role and maybe an early warning for something like this occurring. If there are, as we have shown, stuff flying around in the skies of Arizona that we don't know what it is, I think it's imperative that someone do try to discover what this is, and if the Department of Homeland Security could play a role in doing that, I can't see why you would exclude them from that.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security was conceived out of a national tragedy.
Yes.
And the reason why that national tragedy, 9/11, occurred,
Miscommunication.
we were asleep at the wheel.
Sleep at the wheel.
Intelligence agencies weren't talking to each other.
That's right.
And prima
But it's the same things happening to this day, and there should have never been a Homeland Security agency ever created, should ever been created. It's just more BS and corruption, you know, and they just want it. It's all about surveillance and reconnaissance of the American people and spying on American people. It needs to be destroyed, really.
Faishi, what you're telling
All
me
these agencies do.
is proof of that.
That's right.
I know you hadn't finished your report, but what were your impressions? What were your conclusions at the point where you'd gathered all this data?
I think I was at the point that it was a safety concern for stuff that was flying around out there. I was more concerned about our pilots and my team members that were flying aboard these aircraft and making sure that they were safe. If they saw something that was a near miss or close encounter, I wanted them to be able to report it and have that data flow to the right resources that could possibly use it. That was, you know, my only goal was the safety considerations.
Now, as I understand it, your security classification gave you access to video archives.
I did a lot of data mining, looking for videos that would support the case as to why we need these reporting requirements. So you have to build a case, and that was basically what that issue paper is doing, is making a case for why we need to do something like this. And I think that the data showed that there were things that were flying around out there along the border that were a concern that probably should be on people's radar.
And by definition, let's be clear about this, you weren't skulking around the archives improperly. You had authorization to make these.
I had access to all the information that I needed to. Not as much as I'd like to, but I found a fair amount that supported the case I was trying to make with that report.
So your bosses were supportive?
I would say yes.
And this is around about the time, as I understand it, when the independent office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, 2021, they published a report acknowledging that UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, are real.
UFO.
That's correct. And he also made the recommendation that there would be reporting requirements established at the same time as well. So preemptively, I started working on that for Tucson sector at least.
So you had support from your bosses inside Border Protection, and more importantly, again, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence was an office that was set up to deal with the catastrophe, the failures of 9/11. It was an intelligence czar above the Defense Department, above the intelligence community, entrusted with protecting America. Correct?
That's correct.
And so ODNI was saying, this is real.
And it was all government agencies. It wasn't just specific ones.
But it was mandating, we want reporting.
That's correct.
We want officers and agencies to report this.
That's correct.
And you did.
I did.
So there came a time when you came across a cluster of videos that you thought were important.
There was. I had enough evidence, I thought, and asked around whether I could use these or show these in any form or fashion, and I got a verbal permission. It might not have been the way the government releases stuff, but at that time, I asked permission to show them to friends, family, other people, and use them for this report, and I was given permission.
Were the videos carrying any kind of top secret or above classification?
There are stuff in those videos that are law enforcement sensitive, and I made sure to take care with that stuff.
So you acted responsibly. At no stage did you do anything that breached your security oath?
Right.
I would say no.
Good. You made a decision to provide those videos to a colleague, didn't you?
I did. I met a guy by the name of Andy Marshall, and who ran a social media account, and showed him those videos. He was one of the ones that got to see those.
Why did you do that?
I just believed in what he was doing. He ran a very interesting social media platform. He was very thorough in looking at all the videos. I thought he used discernment. He was a tough-talking New Yorker, and I thought he was the perfect person to show these to. And I got wanted to also get a different opinion about what they may be from a civilian perspective as well.
As a member of the media, can I ask, why didn't you go to the media?
Well, at the time,
Can't trust them.
I think they were reporting
Can't trust the media. They just think it was a joke.
different way than I was comfortable with releasing them to. There was a sensationalism about it, and I didn't want it to be wrapped up in any biased or sensational piece of news.
Were
They
you
show, like,
worried that
bringing
the
in
media
clowns. Yeah.
wouldn't be taking these seriously? I mean, there seems to be a
Yes.
sad history of media ridiculing and stigmatizing.
Right.
Well, that too, and there's also the fact that these videos don't show some of the profound things that have been, labeled, such as the 5 observables. One of them does. One of the videos does show that, but the other ones don't show those direct 5 observables, which
Makes
gives
sense.
you pause and kind of boxes them in a sense. And I felt they were profound enough and didn't show anything that the majority of the people that I showed them to could recognize, being drones or balloons or birds or otherwise.
So what characterized these videos? Why had they been kept by Border Protection?
Well, they weren't necessarily kept. They were kind of just archived. Like I said, anything that's going to have a nexus to smuggling, our guys would want to know about, right? So if it's a drone carrying
It's
a
all
narcotics
archived,
load
yeah.
or otherwise, that would be something that they would use to, change our tactics as well.
So I can imagine there are a lot of cartel drones, organized crime drones coming over the border.
Apparently there
Yeah.
are now, yes.
Well, yeah.
And far removed.
Would you say that you and your colleagues were pretty damn good at picking a drone from any other type of object?
I would say all the agents were good at that, not just the guys that I worked with, but the guys that operated the cameras in the air and the guys that operated the cameras on the ground, yes.
The crucial
We have reports today where the cartels are using drone smuggling, cocaine, just drop them over the border, and that's it, because most of it is closed. So they got these drones, and everyone learned about drone warfare from Ukraine and how good they are. So everybody's learned from that, the Ukraine experience and stuff like that, and how instrumental drones are. Before, nobody used them.
thing is that with the forward-looking infrared, you can see whether it's a drone.
You can. They have distinct signatures that allow you to make that determination.
What is it about a drone that makes it so distinguishable?
Well, they have engines, that generate heat. So you're able to see the
see
signatures
that.
of these, vehicles by how they're propelled through the air.
Right.
Without giving away any national security secrets, how far away an object can you see with these systems, these incredible optics?
Miles. Miles.
And you were seeing strange objects,
Absolutely.
hundreds of objects that couldn't be explained.
Well, there was reports from agents of hundreds of objects that they couldn't explain. Me personally, I've only seen, a handful at a time, but the other pilots and stuff that I worked with, would equal up to that, yes.
But you began to realize there was a pattern of anomalous objects that couldn't be explained.
That's correct.
They weren't drones. They weren't balloons. What were they?
Well, some of them were mundane objects. Some of them were balloons.
So you ruled those out.
Well, believe it or not, those Mylar balloons float long distances. You'll find those things out in the middle of nowhere sometimes. So those are a concern as well. But we've seen those. We know what those look like. We've seen them flying through the air. These were things that weren't known, that didn't have the signature of balloons, whether they were latex or Mylar.
So what did Andy do with the videos?
Andy put them out there and released them to the public.
And what happened?
He took a lot of heat
These are
for doing
both
so.
cool.
He really did. There was a lot of people that thought these just showed
That's
mundane
freaking
objects.
weird.
How did you respond to that?
I personally didn't respond. Andy was the one that responded, and
Yeah, obviously, that looks like,
his social media
Wow.
platforms were attacked.
here's the object right here. And you got the A10 Warthog. Wish I had one of those. Different small objects here. Got that weird one right there, and also it's like a paper thing or aluminum thing, and a diamond shaped there. Yeah, it looks like a little foil type thing.
He was attacked by the general
it's
public with
changing
comments
shape,
and
right.
disparaging remarks.
So the pair of you made a decision to do something, didn't you?
We did. It was I felt good about giving those to Andy's, but when I gave them to Andy, it was more of a gift. I washed my hands at them at that point in time. It was just something for the public to see.
What was the reaction inside Border Protection when it became public that these videos were now sitting on a server for the public to see?
Well, you're talking about the August 2023.
Oh no, sorry, I'm talking about when Andy got the videos. He posted them pretty quickly.
I never heard. I was actually employed while some of those were being released, so I never heard.
Were your bosses hostile?
No, they weren't
boy.
hostile at all.
So there's no cover
You're
up
lucky.
inside
The old
Border
days,
Protection.
they
Your
would
bosses aren't
grill
covering
you.
up for some
No.
dark program.
No, not at all.
They were supportive of your UAP investigations.
I don't know if they were supportive. The main boss that I was working for that put me on this task, he was ultimately in control who I was developing this product
In the old
for.
days, they could
Right.
kill.
So he was
Nobody's-
supportive in it.
Crucially, nobody's trying to shut you down.
No one's trying to shut me down.
And when Andy put those videos up online, and
I was
people
never
were looking at them,
disciplined for him.
nobody told you off.
No one told me off.
Well, full marks and credit to Border Protection for having the
Very
courage
lucky.
as a public organisation to support a good officer like yourself.
Well, I was happy to help the public in doing so.
Was it a difficult decision?
It was, I think, always in the back of your mind. Accessing a government computer and doing what I did is obviously, not something that's done on a regular basis. There people have taken cell phone videos of government computers. You can find those out. So that weighed on me heavily. For one, I didn't want to be in trouble for national security violations in any form or fashion, but I wasn't doing it for nefarious purposes,
Why
Ralph.
did
I
you
was
do
doing
it?
it for safety considerations.
Why did you do it?
For safety considerations, Russ.
Yeah,
That
you
was,
said that.
like I said, I felt strongly. I flew personally as well, and I didn't want to have a strike with one of these, just like what you described with the F-16.
You were concerned somebody might get killed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the blowback continued from the skeptics and the debunkers.
They did. You get the gamut of stuff. It's birds, it's balloons, it's drones.
I have to admit, at this time, I remember reading about it and thinking the rubber duck video looked ridiculous. And I remember thinking, oh, well, it's just rubbish. And then what did you do? You
Well-
made a decision to refer it on to another
What a
group.
cutie pie.
Absolutely, and that was done by Andy. Andy had the foresight to be able to, if he was going to release these, he wanted to
How about
release
the rubber
these
ducky?
or release the rubber duck in the right way, and it was sent off to the Scientific Coalition for Unexplained
How about the
Aerial
rubber
Phenomena.
ducky?
So that went and was peer
Oh,
reviewed
God.
by their guys, specifically by Peter Reale, and he generated a report. That report was going to get stuck into my report. That was going to go to my boss, but unfortunately, I retired before it was complete.
Your health issues,
I do have health issues.
are they related to the job you've been doing?
I can't say they are, not at least not for the Border Patrol.
But it's taken a toll on you, your health.
It has taken a toll on me.
Has whistleblowing taken a toll on you?
It has. It has. I personally am divorced now. I live in a different state than, I'm from Tucson. I now live in a different state because of it.
Sir, I hope one day there comes a time in America where people like you, who've had the courage to come forward, are properly recognised and honoured.
Appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Did you explore the possibility in the course of your research that what you were seeing were black projects, secret US weapons or aerospace programs?
Oh, certainly. That was always, one of the possibilities that one of these videos could have been. It could have been a capture of, U.S. technology for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us want to jeopardise
USA
a national
ball.
security imperative. If we do have 100-foot wide black triangles that can operate without any visible means of
do.
propulsion, I like the idea that it's America that's got it.
I like that as well.
Did anybody ever come to you when you were doing your research, knowing that you were doing this work for Border Protection, and say, look, in the interests of national security, we ask you to stop?
No, and as a matter of fact, Ross, I got more videos. When the first one came, I got made aware of another one, and then another one popped up.
So people were kind of relieved for the first time they were being allowed to talk about this issue.
I think so. I think, all of those videos show something, for the most part, different. And as an operator of those cameras, you don't know what they are. So you don't want to call agents over there. If for example, the La Bruja video looks like a witch cruising through the desert. What are you gonna?
I have to say, this is throughout the ages, people have talked about witches this is where some of that stuff comes from, folklore. And like I said, UFOs, stuff like this, been around forever, as long as humans have. They had a part in creating us as well. But this is where witches and stuff like this comes from. Is that they look like that. And in the old days, parents used to tell kids, beware of witches in the forest, beware of, don't be bad kids or the witches are going to come after you. This stuff existed hundreds of years ago. Way back even longer.
Tell an agent, can you go over there and look at this witch that's cruising through the desert? That's something that, agents have to come to terms with, and if one of these things went down out in the desert, the Border Patrol agents might be the first one out there as well.
So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I'm interested to know, you saw the David Grush revelations that came out in June 2023.
I did.
What was your take?
I was flabbergasted just like anyone else was. And knowing that the government may have non-human intelligence or craft of other dimensions, planets or otherwise is fairly exciting, intriguing, and disturbing at the same time.
The allegations that David made were essentially that there is a non-human intelligence that's been engaging with this planet for a very long time. The US is secretly aware of it. It's been recovering alien, non-human technology, and somewhere in America, it's got facilities where it's secretly attempting to back-engineer it. It's extraordinary allegations.
Those are extraordinary allegations, for sure.
When you heard that, though, did it put some things together in your mind about what you had been hearing about from your operatives in the field and the border protection?
Well, absolutely, especially being in a military training area. You have to test that technology out in some form or fashion. You're not going to be flying it over large cities for the most part. At least that would be my impression. So where else would you fly it? On a military training range that's vast and wide.
But why would they test machinery, such advanced technology, when they surely know that there are border protection aircraft with sophisticated imagery systems?
What better place to do it with guys that have security clearances already?
Yeah, but wouldn't they have tried to shut you down if they'd known that you were doing this research?
I can't speculate as to what their intentions would be.
David's allegation is that there is an incredibly secret operation known as the program, where the United States is trying to back-engineer this technology, this alien technology, in secret facilities. Do you find that even remotely plausible?
Well, with the reports of the agents and the things that I've seen, it's certainly possible, especially where we see the items at, or see the objects at. The objects out on the... Anytime you see any of that stuff on a military reservation or bombing range, it certainly could be our own technology.
Now, we're not going to go through each individual video here, but I do want to talk with you about the findings that were made by SCU about the rubber duck video.
Okay.
Because that's the primary focus of the SCU report. What did they determine?
They determined that the rubber duck was an anomalous object. They couldn't explain it.
They ruled out drones?
They ruled out drones, they ruled out balloons. We actually had a 20-plus year FLIR depot level technician do a pretty good analysis of it as well. He's seen every gamut of what you could possibly see on FLIR, looked at it from different perspectives as well, and it knows how those cameras work very intricately. So he couldn't figure out what it was either.
Did it stop the debunkers and the skeptics?
Nope, they continued on. They continued on with the attack, and I think it only stopped until that SCU report came out.
When the SCU report made its findings that the rubber duck video was genuinely anomalous, did that put an end, or did it slow the level of criticism from the skeptics and debunkers?
I would say yes. I mean, I wasn't actively involved in social media, but I did monitor Andy's Instagram account, and it seemed to. It brought a lot of vindication for what we had put forward.
Can I ask you this? Do you think it's understood in mainstream media and authoritative, if you like, official commentary, that the independent group of scientists have made the...
That's what happens when you lose your rubber duckies in the tub. You lose track of them. They start flying around everywhere. People need to control these rubber duckies, I swear to God. All these days, these rubber duckies are going to attack people.
This determination that the rubber duck video is genuinely anomalous?
Extremely valuable, and I think that just gives them another piece in which they, the next video they get, they'll have a...
But do you think, it's often been misreported, I think, in mainstream media.
We have
Do you think
attacking rubber duckies.
mainstream media have fairly and accurately reported the significance of what SCU found?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I don't even think I've seen any reports from mainstream media about the SCU.
Which is unusual, isn't it?
It is unusual.
If an authoritative group of scientists had made a determination about any other issue, you'd think it would be given some degree of credibility in the media.
They have a top-notch group of scientists working for them over there, and I would think that would be highly credible, especially with what they find.
But it was significant for you and Andy, at least, because you'd done the right thing. Andy had made the decision to put it before SCU. It's anomalous.
Yes, and I think in having that independent exam of it was extremely valuable.
Why did they decide it showed an object that was anomalous?
Because of the different characteristics that it had. So there were no heat source on it. It moved in a weird and strange way. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it was doing some kind of weird circle pattern. So it seemed to be searching for something.
So this is important. On the video, it looks like it's going in a straight line.
It does. It looks like it's going in a straight line.
Is it?
No, it's not going in a straight line.
And they were able to figure that out by looking at the GPS location references on the video.
That's correct. All that data was provided.
And what did that analysis by SCU's Peter Reale show?
It showed that the object was circling and the plane was circling, so they were both going around each other, which is quite odd. And that the actual operator of the camera seemed to think that it was making a search pattern.
So this is an object that is intelligently controlled.
It appears that way.
It's searching for something.
It appeared that way.
What was it searching for?
Your guess is as good as mine.
In your investigations, did you ever go to the location where this object was seen?
I've worked out in that area, but I did not go to the exact location that it was seen.
It would be an interesting question, wouldn't it? What is it about the features of that location? Perhaps the mineral composition?
It would absolutely be worth checking out.
Would there be something underneath?
That's a distinct possibility too. There's lots of mines and caverns out there. There would probably be something called Quinn's Gate that might be worth checking out there as well.
Well, let's talk about Quinn's Gate. What's Quinn's Gate? When the SCU report made its findings that the rubber duck video was genuinely anomalous, did that put an end or did it slow the...
Your guess is as good as mine.
In your investigations, did you ever go to the location where this object was seen?
I've worked out in that area, but I did not go to the exact location that it was seen.
It would be an interesting question, wouldn't it? What is it about the features of that location? Perhaps the mineral composition?
It would absolutely be worth checking out.
Would there be something under...
So, I have had a lot of reports of where UFOs in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, stuff like that, specifically New Mexico, where extraterrestrial craft, NHI, have gotten energy off of, like uranium off of rocks, off of soil, and the energy of rocks and stuff like that have also contributed to downing of UFOs around there in parts of New Mexico, Arizona, stuff like that, specifically New Mexico. Where also ETs have used the energy of these rocks, the same stuff that we use in atomic weapons, and they've used that as fuel and stuff like that. So this is nothing new. I heard this decades ago. But
Underneath.
just want to put that in.
That's a distinct possibility too. There's lots of mines and caverns out there. There would probably be something called Quinn's Gate that might be worth checking out there as well.
Well, let's talk about Quinn's Gate. What's Quinn's Gate?
Ancient folklore about a gate that may be a portal of some sort. It's a rock structure. There's plenty online that you can find out
Right.
about Quinn's Gate, but it's long been rumored to be some sort of portal, and they've seen anomalous objects
We
near
do
it as
have
well, which
portals.
fits
We
the
do have
definition of where
nexus.
all these pilots are seeing this stuff.
Live
And this
play
location,
lives.
Quinn's Gate, is very near. Where
Very near to where the rubber duck was filmed.
Interesting coincidence.
I'd say so.
So, SCU make this determination that this is an anomalous object. Is there any response? Have you become aware of any response at all from?
I mean, national parks, there are portals, ley lines, time distortion, national parks, Yosemite, other Sequoia National Park, other national parks all around the world. Places have certain types of portals, time dilation changes, and that have UFO phenomena, happening around there. Changes to abnormal weather, time disturbances, etc. That stuff is real.
Either your former department or any government agency?
Not that I know of. Like I said, Ross, I kind of washed my hands from this after I gave these videos to Andy and retired from the Border Patrol.
But crucially, maybe it might be better coming from Andy this, I understand that there was eventually some kind of tacit acknowledgement by a government agency that this rubber duck video was indeed anomalous.
There was. CBP actually did a release
Okay,
of
slow down. CBP is what for our audience?
the U.S.
Customs
Customs and
Border
Border Protection did do a release, kind of a document dump per se. They released some of the things that I was working on, as well as videos as well.
And what did that document dump show?
The document dump had a lot of the work that like I said, that I was working on, but it also had my personal emails and text messages as well, corresponding about what I was doing.
So what was it in the documents that were released by Customs and Border Protection that underlined the fact that this rubber duck video was anomalous?
Well, for one, it came from the Department of Homeland Security. It showed that it was an authentic video that was coming from them, and that was, part of the operations per se.
But what declaration, if any, did they make about the video?
They personally didn't make any determinations about it. They just released it, and I think their response was let the public decide.
But basically, there's no finding by Customs and Border
No
Protection
findings at all.
explaining what that object was.
It was a very vague release of documents and videos. I don't think the Department of Homeland Security has commented on it.
You would appreciate that it's fundamental to David Grush's allegations that implicitly there are facilities that are hiding non-human technology.
It's pretty disturbing.
The allegation is that this is being hidden from the American public.
Which is
They do
equally
this forever.
disturbing.
It's nothing new.
But by definition, if it's true, there has to be facilities somewhere in the United States where these objects are being hidden.
I would think that would be correct. Of some secret military base or some remote location that they may be contained.
We have a lot of locations. We have national parks. We have military installations. We have underground. We have underwater. It's all over the place. More specifically in the Southwest, though, because of the desert and all that federal land that we have and stuff. But we use some of these national parks, so we have them closed off to air traffic. We have also, let me see, specifically, my God, I can't believe it. Arizona, we have that national park there where we have Egyptian stuff that is hidden over there. I can't believe I forgot the name of the place. Not enough people here. But we have them all over the place. You know,
Aim.
so.
With the benefit of hindsight, do you think it's plausible that the objects that were reported to you by Border Protection officials, and indeed videoed, might be evidence of some kind of black US program, perhaps underground facilities in Arizona?
It's possible. For sure it's possible. It's a vast area. That training area, the military training area out there where the agents work, is a vast area. So
It's interesting because if it was legal, I would have expected men in dark suits to turn up to your boss's office and say, can you please tell this
They
Bob
used to.
guy to pull his head in?
that's correct.
They didn't, did they?
Yeah, because Bob used to be the name designation that they give to a person for a secret guy. You know, you call them Bobs, you know, or Steves, you know, because Bob was, you know, was really a classified designated name of a person you use instead of a real person's name. You use the name Bob instead of the real person's name.
They didn't, but you know, maybe they've upgraded from the old stories to something newer.
But do you think that people would have become aware of your investigations? It would have been pretty widely known that you were doing this research, wouldn't it?
The guys
Red
in my
Black
office
used to
and
be
shop
around
knew I
stuff
was
all the
doing
time.
stuff
They
with
used to.
UAPs.
So the Department of Homeland
UFOs.
Security knew that you were doing investigations into UAPs.
At least a couple of my supervisors, for sure.
So if there was an authorised, congressionally approved, funded program doing proper legal investigations into laudable, recovered investigations into recovered non-human technology, you would think that there would be a quiet word given to your bosses and just ask Bob to go quiet on that one.
You would think so. You would think so.
And that didn't happen.
That did not happen.
Let's talk about Sedona. There are a large number of witnesses who've independently said to us that they have seen very similar objects to what your Border Protection officials describe around Sedona, a place tantalisingly described as Secret Mountain. Have you ever heard of interesting activity around Sedona?
I have heard
All
of
the time.
interesting activity around Sedona, and I've personally been out to Sedona camping and spent time out there exploring an area that's known for having some of that activity.
And have you seen any of that yourself?
I did not. I personally did not see any activity while I was there doing some looking around, but a lot of other people did.
We have witnesses who claim that they have been confronted in the forest by men with guns, purporting to be government but not showing any ID, telling them that if they don't leave, they will be murdered.
I have not seen that.
That does happen. I've heard that, but because around in those places here, there are UFOs that come out of these places, just like other national parks, whether it's Sequoia, Redwood National Forest, Yosemite. It's all around the U.S. that's happening, where we have secret facilities. We have it there also in Arizona. What is that? That one place. Oh my God. Where we've had Egyptian stuff and all sort of stuff, and people get harassed if they stay there. People are threatened with their lives as well. There's so much stuff going on there. People see other extraterrestrial type of creatures, Sasquatch type creatures. You have tribal spirits. It is, I mean, they do threaten you, so these people. It's criminal. We got thugs, criminals that are keeping this a secret.
Known for having some of that activity.
And have you seen any of that yourself?
I did not. I personally did not see any activity while I was there doing some looking around, but a lot of other people did.
We have witnesses who claim that they have been confronted in the forest by men with guns, purporting to be government but not showing any ID, telling them that if they don't leave, they will be murdered.
That's contractors.
I
Those
have
are
not seen that
contractors.
personally.
But do you think it's plausible that the military might be locating a facility adjacent to a place like Sedona?
Well, those are contractors. They're not overseen all by the government, and those are by not just contractors, but defense contractors as well.